Thank you very much, Mr. Montut. Good morning to everyone in the diaspora locally and to our media persons, to everyone following our live broadcast this morning. These are indeed critical times and trying times for most countries or all countries in the world. The instability, the uncertainty, and more so the vulnerability of third world countries and developing countries. And that is why it is very critical what our policy position is, what we would do, how we would do it. Now, I need to highlight a few key areas here today, because it is important for us to understand where things originate from. In fact, for the first time, I listened to the Prime Minister's entire presentation at the cabinet briefing. If I were to summarize, I would say 80% of what the Prime Minister said is inaccurate. Half-truths, some of them outright lies. Passing the buck, blaming the opposition. As one U.S. Senator indicated, if you've spent 2 years in government, you can no longer blame the previous government, because by then, this is why you are in government. You promised the people that you would fix the situations. Now, I always tell people, and I heard the Prime Minister make a statement that he cannot be upset with President Trump because what President Trump is doing is what he said he would have done. Well, Mr. Prime Minister, I have here the two manifestos of the Labour Party, 2011 and 2021, which is the one that you are directly responsible for. I want St. Lucians, in speaking about this possible travel ban on St. Lucia, we must understand the policy position of a St. Lucia Labour Party. You can pretend as much as you want as members of the Labour Party. Labour Party has been anti-America. You have never embraced the values and the systems of the U.S., and if you want to challenge me on that, I challenge you to disclose the voting at the UN whenever Labour Party is in office. And don't think that the world does not pay attention, because America has one vote at the UN and St. Lucia has one vote at the UN. We need to keep this in mind, because you see, when you look at the Labour Party manifesto, and I want to give St. Lucians the information. In 2011, this is what the Labour Party said. The SLP will seek new investors from non-traditional sources like the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and the Scandinavian countries. These strategic moves into new markets will be closely aligned with our external relations policies and programs. So you feel, yes, we may be doing business with China and with India and Brazil, but you also have Russia in there. What signal are you sending to the United States? What signal are you sending to our traditional partners that we have always done business with? So, I heard the Prime Minister in his cabinet briefing, pre-cabinet briefing, boast about they have diplomatic relations with Taiwan, and that is so strategic. Mr. Prime Minister, let me remind you, it was a United Workers' Party under Sir John that established diplomatic relations with Taiwan. When Labour came in, you all broke diplomatic relations with Taiwan and went to mainland China. And it was a UWP returning to office that went again into diplomatic relations with the Republic of China on Taiwan. So get your facts straight and your half-truths that you present, because your manifesto clearly states what your policy position is. Now, you may tell me that that was Kenny Anthony's policy position because Kenny Anthony was the Prime Minister, but you are the Deputy Leader. Now, I want to bring you to your own manifesto on page 28. This is what you said, Mr. Prime Minister, in your manifesto. Good governance, anti-corruption, and constitutional matters. Page 28. This is what you said on number 2. Strengthen the Integrity Commission so that it can undertake meaningful action against public officials and politicians who engage in acts of corruption. These are your words, Mr. Prime Minister, or the words of your manifesto. Number 3, enact appropriate legislation so that members of Parliament are not allowed to sit in Parliament and be remunerated if they fail to submit to the satisfaction of the Integrity Commission the annual returns for any year in the previous Parliament in which it became due. Philip J. Pierre, these are the promises that you made to the people of St. Lucia. Why did that Integrity Commission go for an entire year without a chairman? And all the allegations of corruption that have been made and can be substantiated by the average St. Lucian walking on the streets. What do you have to say about that, Mr. Prime Minister? That persons could say that holding free jobs, a sports reporter on HTS, a job at the public service where the salary is stipulated, and doing a little something online could become millionaires overnight. How do you explain that, Mr. Prime Minister? How do you explain to the Integrity Commission? Who appoints the Integrity Commission? The Cabinet of Ministers appoints an Integrity Commission to investigate themselves. And I'm not accusing you of anything. That's the policy. When UWP was there, we did it. But we did not go for that period of time without an Integrity Commission. So who is investigating all of the allegations concerning CIP and what Mr. Martinez has disclosed? The foreign accounts of persons in high-ranking positions in government. Some have accounts in Egypt. Have they declared it to the Integrity Commission? The millions of dollars that is deposited or was deposited in U.S. accounts and accounts in Dubai, have they been declared to the Integrity Commission? So when you want to come and talk to St. Lucians, because I heard my colleague Mr. Fevrier on the issues that confront us, and we are coming to this because it is very important for us to understand the PM, the present Prime Minister, appears to be more concerned about the opposition than about his role as Prime Minister of this country. Every other statement made by the Prime Minister in his pre-cabinet briefing was leveled at the opposition. No wonder the Calypsonians are singing more about the opposition than they are singing about the government. Now let's come to it, Mr. Prime Minister. You keep saying no official communique has been sent to you. So I want to ask you a question, Mr. Prime Minister. When you went to the meeting with the Secretary of State, the CARICOM meeting with the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, what were you doing there? Were you just keeping them company? You know, there's an interesting story in the Bible. I can tell you where it's taken from. 2 Samuel chapter 18. And anybody who is home, you can read. About Cush and another gentleman. The other man could run. So he wanted to bring the message to King David. And the more the captain of the army tell him, don't go, because you can't deliver the message. He refused to hear. They sent a man who could deliver the message, but because he could outrun the man, he outran him. And when he got to King David and they asked him what's going on, he said he just saw a lot of commotion, but he's clueless about what is happening. He couldn't deliver any message. Is that the nature of our Prime Minister? You just see confusion all over the world, but you are clueless. Every time this matter comes up, you keep on saying you've not received any official communique. Mr. Prime Minister, I have a question for you, because you wouldn't allow me at your press conference to ask you. So I can ask you the same way I listen to you. I know you're listening to me because you know everything I've said about you. And you made remarks to them in your pre-cabinet briefing. So, are you so inconsequential as a Prime Minister that the U.S. does not even feel it important to officially communicate to you? That they can just put it on a newspaper or put out a press release? Because any Prime Minister of substance would not wait for an official communique. From the time you hear there is a problem, you know what you do? You would move with haste. Who do we have in D.C.? You mean we have no ambassador? We have nobody of enough reputation in the diaspora, in the U.S., whether in New York at the UN, or in Washington, D.C., or in Miami, who can even give us an update? So you still there waiting for Secretary of State to send you, Philip J. Pierre, an official letter when a travel ban can be imposed on St. Lucia any moment from now? Now you say people rejoice. I'm not among those rejoicing over that. For that, I would rather not be in government than to have a travel ban imposed on St. Lucia, because the cost to St. Lucia is worse. So, Mr. Philip J. Pierre, you better get up from where you are and begin to do what the people elected you to do. And if you cannot do it, call the elections. Because the PM keeps on saying no official communique has been given to him. A UWP government would know what is going on. You know what we call that? Networking. Mr. Prime Minister, do you have a network? Do you, and I'm not talking about cable and wireless, digital or flow, you know, because you have a strange way of understanding things. Do you have a network of persons, of like-minded leaders, of people, when things are happening, they can inform you? That is what the world is about. It's about networking. You know, everybody understands the aspect of networking, you know. Listen to me. businessmen network, politicians network, professors, reporters. Everybody knows who is in the network and who they can go to for reliable information. We have a prime minister in St. Lucia. Who is your network? Richard Frederick? A man who peddles more half-truths and lies than anybody else in this country? Is that your network? Ernest Hille? A man who cannot put two words of truth together? That is who your network is. So, let me give you an example. When Carnival Cruise Lines decided they were pulling out of St. Lucia between 2006 and 2011, Alan Chasney, as Minister of Tourism, got a call the evening through his network, and that's what I'm talking about, informing him that Carnival was cutting off. That's the ownership that used to make 52 calls into St. Lucia. And he called me and he said, Guy, as Minister for Ports, we need to be in Miami next morning, the following day. So he said, get ready, come down to the airport. I'll pick you up in Bexon. I was at my constituency office, and we headed to Miami. When they opened the doors of Carnival Cruise Lines, we were by the door waiting. Said, what are you all doing here? Said, we got word. Said, but the decision is made. We said, no, all we want is a meeting. And we were able to have a meeting. And Stevenson King can tell you about it. He's in your government today. He was Prime Minister. We went there with a package to be able to negotiate. And we were able to negotiate. And we were able to save Carnival Cruise Lines from stopping its coming to St. Lucia. That is what we call networking. So, Mr. Prime Minister, you better get it right. And if you don't have a network, you better begin to deal with one. Now, we are on the verge of losing the opportunity to travel to the United States. On what basis? On CIP? Now, here are the comments that we have received from the minister responsible for CIP. He said the money does not belong to us. That is what Ernest Hille said. Our passports are sold. The money does not belong to us. So, what are we supposed to do? So, we have no passports. We have no projects. But we are on the verge of losing our ability to travel to the United States. So what is the benefit in it for St. Lucia? Galaxy is a disaster. Galaxy is a disaster for us. Okay? And more so, you can go down there. Chinese workers alone are down there. What is the benefit to St. Lucia? A project that should have been completed June this year. Mr. Prime Minister, I have the BMAX agreement, which is in your constituency, the Rock Hall Housing Project with BMAX. The official opening or handing over of the houses should be done this month, June 2025. When we called upon you and we indicated to you that the persons dealing with that, they had some problems, and we were trying to get them to understand that the man was involved in some trafficking. You know what the Prime Minister gave us for a response? His response was, they've changed the director of the company. That's how you deal with a problem? when a company that the government, we're not talking about a private citizen, you know. We're talking about a government doing business with a man who is labeled and branded as corrupt, was even arrested. And your excuse was they've changed the directors of the company. And when the leader of the opposition filed a judicial review, you and Ernest Hill now saying, well, we all have cancelled the contract with BMAX. So all the passports BMAX sold, who has the money? Where is the money for the passports? Then, we have the two Galaxy agreements for the real estate and for the infrastructure. Now, Mr. Prime Minister, you made some very damning statements at your press conference, which I will address. Because, St. Lucia, I want you to know, we have been sounding the alarm about this crisis that St. Lucia is finding itself in today. And whether it is implemented or not, our names have been tainted on the international scene. Ernest Hill did it to us with Jufali, the British government. Everything that Ernest Hill places his hand into is shredded with allegations of corruption. Ask them about West Indies Cricket Board. Ask them about the office that was supposed to be operating, that Michael Holden spoke about, that was supposed to be operating in St. Lucia, and how much money went missing in there. Ernest Hill again was involved. And now you've given Ernest Hill carte blanche. And Mr. Prime Minister, when the matter was brought up to you, and so you can know that I know what I am saying, I can quote you by saying, Mr. Emmanuel is a good man. How can we get him out of that situation? So you, Philip J.P., I want you to know that I know. And I want you to challenge me that you didn't make that statement. You know why I know? Because I went to Washington, D.C., and I spoke to Mr. Martinez, and I listened to the tapes myself. Because people want to pretend Martinez have his own issues. Martinez can deal. He's an American citizen. He can live in America. I have family in the U.S. Can you imagine what it's like that we can't even see our family? Everybody is afraid to travel. And while you, Mr. Prime Minister, while you are boasting about one university graduate per household, how many St. Lucian students, and I know that the statement made by President Trump is a general statement that they are going to review, they've put on hold. But there are some countries, you know what China was able to do? Go and negotiate new tariffs with America. You know what? When you have leverage, you can use the leverage to the advantage of your country. You, Philip J.P., have no leverage with the United States of America. The only government that have leverage with the United States is a United Workers' Party government. When we are in office, we always have leverage. In fact, I need to remind St. Lucians, it was the work of Alan Chasney that made it possible that you could get your visas renewed without having to travel to Barbados. Have we forgotten that? And we were on the verge of getting interviews done right here in St. Lucia, so you would not necessarily have to go through the expense of traveling to the embassy in Barbados. We were working with the U.S. government to get a pre-clearance facility at our airports here so that domestic flights from the U.S. could come to St. Lucia. All of these have disappeared under the watch of a St. Lucia Labour Party. We have regressed. Mr. Prime Minister, you said we were the ones who changed the rules of CIP. So if you didn't agree with the changes that we make, why didn't you reintroduce what was there before? You've had 4 years. You still want to come and say it was UWP that changed the rules of CIP? So you could stop the projects. You could stop the building of the new St. Jude. You could stop the housing project at Talvan. You could stop the Castries Grosile Highway. You stopped so many other things that was happening. You stopped the computer program with schools with the lessons and the books. And you gave them blank computers. But you could not stop what was happening with CIP. So if it was UWP who did it, why did we issue only about 700 passports to Galaxy for the Canals project, and they had to put in the $90 million themselves, 90 million US, and through CIP they would get 210 million. You gave them 5,000 additional passports. The contracts are here, Mr. Prime Minister. It's been circulated, 5,000. And then you turned around and you gave the same Galaxy another 6,000 files for the infrastructure program. And you want to come and blame a United Workers' Party government? Mr. Prime Minister, I have news for you. It looked to me today, it looks like people eating railings now. Because when UWP was building roads, your mantra was people don't eat roads. But I hear you boasting railings in the 21st century. 2025. You've represented Castries East for 28, 29 years. And you're still boasting about building railings. Now, I welcome the idea of people getting railings, you know. But as a Prime Minister, that's what you have to boast about today? Railings? So I want to know, while I support the railings, because it's necessary, I want to ask you, Mr. Prime Minister, do people eat railings? And when we talk about eating, sometimes I try to think of whether you are a comedian or whether you are real. So I know some statements. They say the proof of the pudding is in the eating. I heard the Prime Minister say the proof of the eating is in the pudding. Mr. Prime Minister, can you explain that to me? The proof of the eating is in the pudding? Or the proof of the pudding is in the eating? I don't know. I try to understand that. Then I heard the Prime Minister say to reduce the price of goods, that zero-rated items will become VAT exempt. Or VAT exempt items will become zero-rated. Now, Prime Minister, don't try and give the people a 6 for a 9. You know prices ain't going down. And if it goes down, it's minuscule. You don't come and say, well, we expect prices to go down. All the economists you have in the government, if you said our 2.5% had no impact, what impact will your 12.5% have, Mr. Prime Minister? So why didn't your economists calculate the prices? Your customs officers knows the duties, and come and tell the people of St. Lucia right now, A tin of corned beef that was costing you $7 should cost you $5 because we've removed the 12.5%. That is what I expect from you. Not making blanket statements, well, we expect. The Prime Minister also boasted about subsidizing cooking gas. Every government for the last 20 or 25 years in this country have subsidized cooking gas. That includes a previous Labour government and a previous UWP government. Why you, Philip JP, want to make it look, and none of us put gas at $16 to subsidize cooking gas. So why you want to pretend that you're granting St. Lucians a favor? You want numbers? You say numbers don't lie. Let's put the numbers out. You are making in excess of $70 million on fuel today. In excess. We use 24 million gallons of fuel minimum for the year. You're making an extra $3 on a gallon of fuel. 24 by 3 is 72. So when you make the 72 million, how much are you subsidizing the cooking gas? And here's what the Prime Minister say. Oh, we subsidize other items. Every government have subsidized rice, flour, and sugar from the time the government warehouse was established. So Philip JP, you have done nothing for any St. Lucian. You take from the right hand and you put it in the left hand. That is what you are doing. You overtax us and then you take a little percentage of the tax and you give it back to the people and you make them believe that you have granted them a favor. You know who does that? Con men. People who con people are the ones who do that. They make you believe they are doing something for you. But really and truly, they have done nothing. This government, and I heard him talk about the Black Bay farmers. You forget who was in government when y'all took the land to sell to range. You forget who put out the Black Bay farmers from Black Bay, that it was Labour Party who was in office. Mr. Prime Minister, if you're going to come to a press briefing, come to a press briefing and tell the people the truth. Tell them why you have allowed Ernest Hille to get away with so much. And the new 4,000 files that was issued for CIP, why wasn't that disclosed when you were making your presentation? My information is another 4,000 have been issued. In closing, Mr. Prime Minister, it appears to me that while you boast about your achievements, that you are the most incompetent Prime Minister ever to govern this country. You want to protect individuals of the Labour Party. And I want to ask the government, in closing, you have so many press persons in the government, in the Prime Minister's office. In fact, you could have Riani call Mr. Fevrier to ask him about direct awards. But you cannot have Riani put out a statement on what happened in there pertaining to the possible travel ban. Why is the Labour Party the one responding? Lisa is the PRO for the Labour Party, not the government of St. Lucia. Why is it Lisa who is clueless about anything in foreign or international relations? You went to a meeting with Mr. Rubio, Prime Minister, and I don't believe that Rubio would have ended his meeting without indicating the concerns they have about this region. So is either you chose not to tell us, maybe you had gone for a drink when the discussion took place, Or maybe you are not in the meeting. You knew when Alan Chasney went for Posh Carib. But you don't know what happened in the meeting with Rubio when you are supposed to be there representing the interest of St. Lucia. St. Lucians, we need to stop electing comedians to represent us. And we need to elect real men, men of substance. And my final question to you, Mr. Prime Minister, does the situation with Richard Frederick's visa have any implications on the reputation of St. Lucia today? Because you tried to force the hands of the United States to give Richard Frederick a visa. But now you have put all St. Lucians at risk of losing their visas. And I've said it, Mr. Richard Peterkin, I ain't going to comment on what you say today. But rest assured I will comment. Because throughout the months leading up to today, the United Workers' Party has been saying the approach of the government is putting us in trouble. But nobody was listening. Now, we are beginning to see signs. And all those of you whose visas have not been renewed, people who are in prominent positions, people who have a certain reputation, good reputation at that, not bad, their visas have not been renewed. But you all keeping it quiet. Keep it quiet for as long as you all want. I am appealing to the right thinking St. Lucians. Let us rally our efforts together. Let us put our voices together. And let us tell this government, we need to fix this CIP once and for all so that St. Lucia can be removed from this blacklist. I thank you.